In 1983, Gene Simmons first met Shannon Tweed at the Playboy Mansion, a meeting that would linger in memory for decades. Though their eventual wedding in 2011 wasn't a celebration of love, but a calculated effort to cover up a scandal that threatened to unravel everything he had built. Footage from their reality show, recently unearthed, reveals moments of unguarded conversation, the kind of intimate dialogue never meant for public eyes, as shadows of past mistakes, hidden sins, and whispered regrets seeped into view. His son was caught in a plagiarism scandal, drawing media scrutiny that had the power to tarnish the family name, while legal documents from 2025 surfaced, implicating him in incidents involving female employees, casting a dark and unexpected shadow over a man who had once boasted about sleeping with 4,800 women, a reputation that had once seemed untouchable but was now colliding with reality. Yet before all this, before fame, notoriety, and scandal, there was a boy named Chaim Witz, born on August 25, 1949, in Haifa, Israel, into a family whose survival had been carved from unimaginable trauma. His mother, Flora Klein, had barely survived the Holocaust. Born in Hungary in 1925 and forced as a teenager into backbreaking labor while her world dissolved around her, every camp a reminder of family lost and freedom stripped away. His father, Yohiel Witz, had also escaped Hungary, marrying Flora in 1946 before moving to Israel in 1947, just months before the nation's birth, bringing with him scars, silence, and a history heavy with survival. Their past, etched in suffering, would echo through Chaim's life, embedding lessons of endurance, resilience, and an almost instinctive understanding of danger, loss, and the fragility of existence. By 6, life had already grown harsh. His parents' marriage fell apart due to financial strain, leaving his father in Israel while Flora raised him alone in Tat Carmel. She labored long hours in factories, sewing buttons and crafting garments, often leaving only bread and milk for dinner, and young Chaim, determined to lighten her burden, began foraging for wild fruit with a friend to sell by the roadside, tasting the bitter combination of necessity and independence. His first winter coat was stitched together from an army blanket, the frigid nights pressing into his bones, yet his resolve held firm. He cried himself to sleep in the silence of a nearly empty house, but never surrendered to despair. School offered no respite. Other children mocked and bullied him for being different, echoing the prejudice that had followed his mother from the ruins of Europe, reinforcing a sense of isolation. But there, amid textbooks and taunts, Chaim discovered a different kind of world. American comic books, Spider-Man, Superman, and the heroic exploits within, a universe where courage and triumph existed, even if he couldn't fully read the words. Driven to understand, he painstakingly pieced together English while already fluent in Hebrew, Hungarian and Turkish absorbing each page, each panel, as though they were lifelines from an alternate reality where pain could be transformed into power. The silence of his mother's trauma haunted him in subtle ways. She had been forced into labor at 14, dressed in marked clothing, moving from camp to camp as relatives vanished around her grief never needing words. Her overprotectiveness, her sudden tears, the heaviness in her eyes, they all left imprints on Chaim, instilling a relentless drive to never show weakness, to mask vulnerability behind resilience, a trait that would become central to his survival and identity. In 1957, Flora, having survived unimaginable loss, made the life-altering decision to leave Israel with 8-year-old Chaim for Queens, New York, arriving with no money, no English, and no family awaiting them. His father remained in Israel, remarrying and starting a new life that Chaim would never witness, leaving him to forge a new path in a city vast, foreign, and dazzling in its possibilities. He became Eugene Klein, navigating the wonders and shocks of American life, flush toilets, the hum of streetcars, the strange comforts of TV dinners, and the endless noise of the city. Adaptation was a struggle. Flora worked grueling 15-hour days in Brooklyn factories, leaving Eugene to fend for himself, learning the rules of the streets, babysitters, and public life, and developing a resourcefulness that would define him. School alternated between Jewish institutions and public classrooms, but fitting in remained a battle, his accent, gestures, and foreign ways marking him as different. Undeterred, he sold cactuses door to door, picked fruit, and treated rejection as fuel, learning the currency of persistence and observation. His love of pop culture blossomed. He watched television with an intensity bordering on obsession, absorbing every nuance of language, fashion, and performance, while secretly practicing English and experimenting with the persona he wanted to project. By 9, he legally changed his name to Jean Klein, after the cowboy actor Gene Autry, signaling a commitment to the American dream, to reinvention, to the shedding of a past that had been both painful and formative. The Ed Sullivan Show captivated him, but it was the Beatles' appearance on February 9, 1964, that ignited an unquenchable desire for fame and recognition, a yearning to be seen, celebrated, and admired, driving him to mimic accents, charm peers, and explore every avenue of social engagement. The 1960s brought work wherever he could find it, from slicing meat in butcher shops to serving behind deli counters. Each dollar earned a testament to survival, discipline, and patience. Avoiding alcohol, he observed older men falter in their indulgences, learning clarity as a form of power, while relentlessly practicing guitar, forming small bands, and dedicating himself to music with a focus that bordered on obsession. In 1968, he enrolled in Sullivan County Community College, earning an associate degree by 1970, and briefly taught 6th grade in Spanish Harlem for $75 a week. Yet his heart remained tethered to the rhythms, chords, and melodies of music. That same year, alongside Paul Stanley, he formed a band initially named Rainbow, evolving into Wicked Lester by 1970, performing in clubs at night and working day jobs, translating languages for additional income while continuing to send money back to his mother, honoring her sacrifices and the scars she carried. His personal life was as complex as his professional one. He reportedly lost his virginity at nearly 14, a moment of awakening on a newspaper route that involved a married woman, an experience he would later chronicle in intimate detail, hinting at both curiosity and a burgeoning awareness of human desire and consequence. Wicked Lester recorded an album at Electric Lady Studios on October 15, 1972, but the A&R director Don Ellis deemed it too messy for radio, shelving it indefinitely, a crushing blow to Gene, Paul, and the rest of the band, who had poured heart, soul, and money into its creation. Changes followed. Steve Coronel was dismissed, Ron Lejack joined briefly, and the project was eventually abandoned. Yet the past could not be allowed to resurface. In 1977, Gene and Paul paid $138,000 to buy back the old tapes, fearing they would tarnish the emerging image of the band that was yet to come. Despite this, bootleg recordings eventually leaked, revealing songs like She and Love Her All I Can, which Kiss would later re-record without crediting the original lineup, a ghostly echo of the band's initial ambition. By January 1973, Jean and Paul, weary of compromise, scoured ads in Rolling Stone and The Village Voice, discovering drummer Peter Criss, seasoned from bands like Lips and Chelsea, and guitarist Ace Frehley, whose presence completed the lineup. Together, they conceived something unprecedented, no ordinary rock band, but a theatrical spectacle, a combination of makeup, fire, and fantasy, drawing inspiration from Alice Cooper's shock rock and the glam stylings of the New York Dolls. Their first show, January 30th, 1973, at the Coventry Club in Queens, drew only 3 attendees, mostly girlfriends of band members, yet the spectacle was unforgettable. Gene breathed fire on stage for the first time, a moment that would define the band's persona and foreshadow their meteoric rise. Fame did not come through radio play, but through the grassroots spread of fan magazines, word of mouth, and relentless touring. Within 18 months, they headlined Anaheim Stadium in 1974, their makeup and stage presence leaving an indelible impression. It was raw, strange, and entirely their own, a perfect reflection of a man who had transformed every hardship, every rejection, and every lesson into a persona larger than life. From the streets of Haifa to the factories of Brooklyn, from bullied child to teenage hustler, from minor band struggles to the birth of a rock legend, Gene Simmons' life had become a tapestry of pain, survival, ambition, and spectacle. A story of relentless transformation, a testament to the human desire to escape, reinvent, and ultimately to endure. As Kiss began to gain attention, the media spotlight intensified, and Gene Simmons found himself thrust into a world of headlines, fan magazines, and relentless paparazzi. The early coverage highlighted their wild performances, the fire-breathing, and the theatrical makeup, capturing the public's imagination and creating a mystique around the band that was both thrilling and exhausting. Every concert, no matter how small, was scrutinized. Even the tiniest mistakes were reported, and fans dissected every gesture, every costume, every note. Gene, who had spent his life learning to navigate rejection and survival, now had to manage the delicate balance between the persona on stage and the man behind the flames. While the audience cheered, the boy who had once walked the streets of Haifa, picking fruit to survive, watched from backstage, aware that fame was a double-edged sword, offering adoration while exposing every vulnerability. Touring life was grueling. Long bus rides between small clubs, makeshift dressing rooms, and nights spent performing to half-empty venues tested their endurance. Conflicts arose between band members, creative differences, clashing egos, and the pressures of constant travel. But there was also a sense of camaraderie born from shared struggle. Gene often found himself mediating disputes, his leadership shaped by a lifetime of hardship and the need to keep the band unified. He carried the weight of responsibility silently, observing patterns, calculating reactions, and ensuring that the show went on, even when exhaustion threatened to break him. Behind the spectacle, Gene's personal life was turbulent. Relationships were fleeting, rumors of affairs circulated in the press, and the glare of fame magnified every mistake. The man who had boasted about thousands of conquests now faced the repercussions of his past choices as private actions collided with public scrutiny. Each headline, each whispered conversation, reminded him that notoriety came with a cost, and the very traits that had propelled him to stardom, charisma, audacity, fearlessness, could also be his undoing. Yet, amid the chaos, there were moments of reflection. Brief glimpses of the boy who had survived war, poverty, and exile, reminding him that identity was more than fame or scandal. Scandals eventually reached the courts. Lawsuits, plagiarism accusations, and employee complaints forced Gene to confront a world of legal battles that threatened his family and his career. The 2011 wedding, once a private affair, was reinterpreted as a public strategy, a calculated move to manage perception and protect those he loved. Media coverage spun narratives, often ignoring the nuance of survival, trauma, and ambition that defined his life. Gene navigated the storm with a careful mixture of defiance and pragmatism, understanding that some battles were fought not on stage but in boardrooms, courtrooms, and the hearts of those who loved and depended on him. Amid the chaos, Gene began to reflect deeply on identity and legacy. From Chaim Witz to Eugene Clean to Gene Simmons, each transformation was a testament to survival, reinvention, and relentless ambition. He considered the lessons learned from trauma, poverty, and fame, the necessity of clarity, the value of resilience, and the consequences of desire. The fire he breathed on stage became a metaphor for a life lived at the edge, balancing spectacle with introspection, notoriety with reflection. He pondered the duality of his existence, the hero to fans, the flawed man in private, and the survivor of a past that few could imagine. As the years unfolded, consequences became unavoidable. Legal challenges persisted, family tensions simmered, and the echoes of past decisions reverberated through his life. Public perception was mercurial. Some hailed him as a legend, a pioneer of rock and spectacle, while others critiqued the ethical shadows that accompanied his notoriety. Gene confronted these realities with the same measured focus that had guided him from the streets of Queens to the stages of Anaheim, learning that survival was not merely a matter of performance, but of accountability, awareness, and resilience. Yet, despite controversies and challenges, his influence endured. The impact of Kiss on rock music, performance art, and pop culture was undeniable. Fans remembered the spectacle, the fire, the makeup, and the charisma, But they also remembered the myth, the complex man behind the flames, whose life was a tapestry of struggle, ambition, and transformation. Gene Simmons's story, from the alleys of Haifa to the stages of the world, became emblematic of human resilience, a journey marked by survival, reinvention, brilliance, and flaw, a reminder that legends are often forged in the tension between triumph and tragedy, spectacle and substance, fame and the indelible echoes of a past that can never be fully erased. Through it all, Gene remained a paradox, larger than life yet deeply human, flamboyant yet introspective, a man whose existence was defined by both the heroes he had admired in comic books and the resilience he had inherited from a mother who survived hell. In the end, his legacy was more than music or fame. It was a testament to endurance, transformation, and the raw, unfiltered complexity of a life lived with fire, both on stage and within the soul. And though time would continue to reveal new facets, scandals, and triumphs, one thing remained undeniable. Gene Simmons had not only survived history, hardship, and notoriety, he had turned them into legend, leaving a mark on the world that would endure long after the final curtain fell. As Gene Simmons' fame solidified, the complexities of family life grew more pronounced. Parenthood brought joys and struggles, a delicate balancing act between being a public icon and a private father. He watched his children navigate the same world that had both cheered and scrutinized him, aware that the legacies of survival, trauma, and ambition could weigh heavily on young shoulders. Conflicts arose, misunderstandings flared, and every decision seemed magnified under the lens of public perception. Yet amidst the challenges, Jean sought to pass on lessons of resilience, determination, and reinvention, the values that had carried him from the streets of Haifa to stadium stages. He taught not only survival but the necessity of clarity, focus, and the courage to face both triumph and failure without flinching. Outside the world of music, Gene ventured into business, leveraging his fame to create side projects, merchandise lines, and branding opportunities. Each endeavor brought both financial rewards and creative tension, forcing him to navigate the delicate balance between artistic expression and commercial viability. There were days when strategy clashed with instinct, and he discovered that running a legacy was as demanding as performing on stage. Every logo, product, and deal became a reflection of both vision and compromise, a mirror of the hard choices that had always defined his life. The decades of relentless performance and touring took their toll on his body and mind. Physical exhaustion, injuries, and the after-effects of high-energy shows tested him daily. Mental resilience became as critical as physical endurance. Coping mechanisms, quiet reflections, and moments of solitude were necessary to maintain balance. Yet even in vulnerability, there was strength, a recognition that survival required both acceptance of limitation and the will to persist. Thoughts of mortality, of how time would eventually claim all, deepened his appreciation for each performance, each song, and each moment shared with fans. Inevitably, rivalries and conflicts with other musicians, bands, and industry executives emerged. Negotiations, creative disagreements, and media feuds created tension, yet Jean navigated these storms with the same strategic thinking that had guided him through his personal and professional life. Every conflict became a lesson, a test of patience, intelligence, and diplomacy. Even as egos clashed, Gene maintained an awareness of the bigger picture, the music, the spectacle, and the legacy that could outlast any personal quarrel. Kiss's influence extended beyond the stage, seeping into pop culture, television, movies, and even comics. The band became more than music. It was a symbol, a movement, a brand recognized worldwide. Fans cosplayed their makeup and costumes, emulating the fire, the spectacle, and the audacity that Gene had embodied. In every corner of the globe, from small towns to massive cities, the energy and mythology of Kiss endured, a testament to the power of reinvention and vision. As years passed, Gene sought redemption and reflection. Mistakes from the past, both personal and professional, demanded acknowledgement. Reconciliation became a priority, mending relationships with family, former band members, and critics, and striving to leave behind not just music, but integrity and accountability. He realized that legacy was not merely defined by spectacle or fame, but by the courage to confront the past honestly and to evolve from it. Awards, recognition, and honors followed, a validation of decades of dedication. Hall of Fame inductions, music awards, and public accolades acknowledged his contributions, yet Gene approached them with a quiet introspection. The applause of the crowd and the gleam of trophies were gratifying, but they could never replace the personal satisfaction of growth, survival, and creative fulfillment. Each honor reminded him that success was multifaceted, comprising both external acknowledgement and internal peace. Mentorship became an unexpected avenue of influence. Young musicians and performers sought his guidance, eager to learn from his experience navigating the music industry, fame, and personal trials. Gene shared lessons not only in technique and performance, but in resilience, strategy, and the importance of understanding one's own identity. Through mentorship, his legacy extended beyond his own achievements, shaping a new generation of artists who could carry forward both the spectacle and the wisdom he embodied. Eventually, thoughts of retirement and final performances emerged. Farewell tours were both celebration and reflection, a bittersweet acknowledgement of a journey that had spanned decades. Emotional concerts brought fans and band members together, each performance a bridge between past struggles and present triumphs. Nostalgia, gratitude, and triumph intertwined. As Gene looked back on the trajectory from small clubs in Queens to stadiums filled with thousands, realizing that the journey itself, marked by risk, creativity, and audacity, was the true reward. In the end, Gene Simmons' story became a study in legacy, resilience, and myth. Public perception, documentaries, books, and tributes captured the outer spectacle. But beneath it all was a complex man who had survived war, poverty, exile, and fame, transforming each obstacle into opportunity and each failure into fuel. Fans saw the hero, the performer, the fire breather. Historians noted the cultural impact. But those who understood him glimpsed the depth, the vulnerability, and the relentless pursuit of reinvention. His life, from Chaim Witz to Gene Simmons, was more than music or fame. It was a testament to the human capacity to endure, transform, and leave an indelible mark on the world. Though scandals, struggles, and controversies would continue to surface, the legend of Gene Simmons endured. A man who rose from the ashes of history, hardship, and personal challenge to become an icon, a myth, and ultimately, a reminder that the interplay of resilience and reinvention can create a life that resonates far beyond the stage and the spotlight. Behind the curtain, away from screaming fans and blazing spotlights, Gene Simmons was a different man. The legend on stage, the fire breather, the larger-than-life persona, was only part of his existence. In private, he maintained rituals and routines that grounded him. Early mornings spent reviewing lyrics, quiet walks to reflect, and evenings reading, sometimes comics, sometimes biographies, a nod to the boy who had once found solace in illustrated heroes. Maintaining a public image exacted a toll. Every gesture, every word, every performance was scrutinized, and the weight of expectation often pressed him into moments of isolation. Moments where the man and the myth collided, each demanding attention, each leaving scars that the public could never see. Romantic entanglements, past loves, and scandalous rumors were inseparable from his public life. Relationships were complicated by fame, mistrust, and the omnipresent glare of the media. Intimacy was often sacrificed on the altar of performance and spectacle. Yet Gene reflected on love and desire with honesty. He recognized both the mistakes and the fleeting triumphs, the regrets and the lessons learned, understanding that desire, when mingled with fame, carried consequences far beyond the private sphere. Friendships and mentorships offered a respite from the pressures of fame. Outside the music world, certain bonds endured. Creative minds, kindred spirits, and trusted confidants who understood both the exhilaration and exhaustion of life under scrutiny. He took younger artists under his wing, sharing lessons in resilience, stagecraft, and survival. knowing that the wisdom forged through decades of struggle could guide the next generation toward both success and self-preservation. These connections reminded him that even legends needed allies, and that trust, carefully cultivated, could withstand the corrosive pressures of fame. Philanthropy became another dimension of Gene's legacy. His personal history, marked by trauma and survival, inspired him to give back, to survivors, to music programs, and to those who, like him, had known adversity. Charitable work offered a counterbalance to the excesses of fame, a way to channel influence into tangible good, a method of transforming personal history into collective benefit. In these acts, he found quiet satisfaction, a validation beyond applause and accolades, a reminder that influence carried responsibility. Gene's creative evolution never ceased. He continued to experiment musically, taking risks with side projects, collaborations, and genre blending, refusing to allow the weight of reputation to stifle innovation. Each experiment, successful or flawed, was an exploration, a testament to the restless curiosity that had carried him from street performances in Queens to the biggest stages in the world. In pushing boundaries, he ensured that both the music and the spectacle remained fresh, captivating audiences across decades. Critics and public backlash were constant companions. Negative press, social media scrutiny, and vocal detractors forced him to develop emotional and strategic defenses. He learned to absorb criticism without surrendering to it, to use public scrutiny as fuel rather than a weapon against himself. These lessons in resilience mirrored those learned from childhood, that observation, patience, and calculated responses could turn adversity into strength. Globally, Gene and Kiss's impact was undeniable. Their music and spectacle influenced fashion, film, and pop culture, and fan culture became a worldwide phenomenon. From Tokyo to São Paulo, from conventions to impromptu street celebrations, their presence transcended borders. Gene's persona became both an icon and a symbol, an inspiration to countless individuals who saw in him the triumph of audacity and reinvention. Aging brought new challenges. Physical endurance waned, and mental resilience was tested in different ways. Stage performances had to adapt to a body that had endured decades of fire, pyrotechnics, and high-energy shows. Reflection on mortality deepened his appreciation for each performance, each fan interaction, and each moment of personal connection. The spectacle of youth evolved into the dignity of experience, each act carefully measured, deliberate, and meaningful. Farewell tours marked the closing chapters of his public life. Emotional concerts, filled with gratitude, nostalgia, and acknowledgement, allowed closure with bandmates, family, and fans alike. Each performance became a bridge between past and present, between struggle and achievement, each note a testament to decades of persistence and passion. The final bow was not an end, but a culmination, a moment where the boy from Haifa, the immigrant from Queens, and the global icon converged in recognition of a journey unparalleled in scope and intensity. Ultimately, Gene Simmons became immortalized not just as a musician, performer, or spectacle, but as a myth, a human paradox who survived unimaginable hardships, transformed them into art and persona, and left a legacy both inspiring and complex. Fans remembered the hero, historians chronicled the achievements, and those who knew him glimpsed the depth beneath the fire and makeup, a life defined by resilience, reinvention, brilliance, and flaw. The myth of Gene Simmons endured as a reminder that survival and audacity, when fused with creativity and courage, could craft a story that transcended time, leaving an indelible imprint on music, culture, and the human imagination.